Good morning. You know, all the world's a stage, and all the men and women merely players. They have their exits and their entrances, and one man in his time plays many parts, his acts being 7 ages. Now, at first, the infant mewling and puking in the nurse's arms, and then the whining schoolboy with a satchel and shining morning face, creeping like snail unwillingly to school. And then the lover, sighing like furnace with a woeful ballad made to Mistress Eyebrow. Then a soldier, full of strange oaths, and bearded like the pard, jealous in honor, sudden and quick in quarrel, seeking the bubble reputation even in the cannon's mouth. And then the justice, in fair, round belly, with good capon lined, with eyes severe and beard of formal cut, full of wise saws and modern instances. And so he plays his part. The 6th age shifts into lean and slippered pantaloon, with spectacles on nose and pouch on side, his youthful hose well saved, a world too wide for his shrunk shank, and his big manly voice turning again toward childish trouble, pipes and whistles in his sound. Last scene of all, that ends a strange and eventful history, is second childishness and mere oblivion. Sans teeth, sans eyes, sans taste, sans everything.
Thank you, Jean Harvey, a friend of our fellowship and quite the thespian. Good morning and welcome to the Unitarian Universalist Fellowship of San Miguel de Allende, where we love one another and we help one another and we have compassion for all. I'm Robin Loving and I'm a member of our Sunday services team and communications and stewardship and a few other things. I'm kind of a UU junkie, and I'll be your service leader today. You heard Jean with this monologue about theatricality and him saying that life is full of life is a stage. His monologue is just a preview for what you're going to hear Marjorie Burren talk about today, which is theater, theology, and therapy. I'd like to welcome our visitors. I don't have any cards, none were passed to me, so maybe we have no visitors, but I'm guessing we do. Would any visitors stand up, please? Yes, yes, yes. Thank you so much. Take a look at our visitors. We've got 3 visitors, and you will be warmly welcomed at coffee, cookies, and conversation afterward. So thank you so much for being with us today. You may... Sí. This young man might even be one of our musicians in the future. I've got a plant in the audience. We also want to make sure that our Zoom visitors are now writing their names into chat and writing their places of origin so that we can welcome you just as warmly over conversation después del servicio, after the service. We now want to remind you that we are here with all that you've seen during the Fiestas Patrias on the ancestral lands of the Otomí, the Nahua, and the Chichimeca people. They have quite a history of theatricality, and we have been able to take some of that and adopt it for our own, not co-opt it, but adopt it for our own in our chosen country. And we are certainly glad to be trying to follow up that great theatrical business with our theatrical theme today. We record our Sunday services, and you may see them online at UUFSMA.org, where you will also see lots of activities that we do all during the week that you're invited to, and you will also see the opportunity to become a member. We encourage you. Welcome. So as Marjorie, who is our presenter today, begins to light our chalice, I will have some opening words that are personal to me. My family was very word-oriented, but outside of sending us over to that huge bank of encyclopedias to look up words, we weren't exactly encouraged to express ourselves. So imagine my thrill when I entered the 8th grade and there I was in theater class. Not just theater class, but theater class that was run by a woman, I swear to God, named Shirley Stages. It enthused me like nothing in my whole life ever had, and I pursued that passion for the next 7 years, having earned only one third-place medal at a very small speech tournament in Texas after 7 years. I gave up the stage to people like Jean and Marjorie, and I took up the pen instead. But the whole experience gave me the spirit to find my voice and to find myself, as so many of us do when we watch a good movie, a good play, or a good opera, hear a good opera. Now, let's find our voices and ignite the flame of full expression within us as we sing hymn number 347, Gather the Spirit. It's my pleasure to welcome our presenter, Marjorie Burren, and our president, Alan Ziesman, who will be our song leaders today. Please rise in body or spirit and remain standing afterward as we recite our covenant. Thank you. Thank you, Alan, and thank you, Marjorie, and thank you all for remaining standing while Miguel Ángel and I do our covenant in English and Spanish. Thank you, Miguel Ángel. We respect the interdependent web of life and work for a just and peaceful world. We encourage the search for truth and meaning, strive for compassion in our relationships, and seek values that will benefit our lives and the lives of others.
Respetamos todos los estilos de vida dentro de su red interdependiente y trabajamos por un mundo justo y pacífico. Alentamos la búsqueda de la verdad y la comprensión total. Nos esforzamos por mantener compasión en nuestras relaciones y buscamos valores que beneficien nuestras vidas y las vidas de los demás. Este es nuestro convenio.
How wonderful it is for us to gather in peace and gather in thanks, and every now gather with symphony, because we are the beloved community. We do come together every week to share in joys and sorrows and concerns, which is perhaps one of the most sacred part of this service. I'm Jurgen Ahlers. I'm a member of the Sunday Service Committee and the board, and it's my great pleasure to share this time of joys, sorrows, and concerns that members of our fellowship have brought forward. As you know, Tom and Malcolm are traveling, and so it's possible that may be one reason we do not have that many joys, concerns, or sorrows sent in. However, I do have a few that I do definitely want to share with you. COVID seems to be a thing, not just of the past, but it's making its reappearance. Last week, you probably knew that Paula all of a sudden had to cancel her piano playing because she came down with COVID. We're delighted to see her here today wearing her green shirt, which is the color of new life and health, hopefully. I think that's one of the reasons why Marjorie picked the color of green for us people to wear this morning. Sadly to say, several more people in our fellowship came down with COVID this week. Cornelia Ulrich, who is part of the Hermana women's group, came down with COVID, and several members of the women's group Hermana have come down with COVID. So it's a sign to us. We need to just take some care. I see several of you wearing masks as a precaution. We have to be minded of that. So we would light a candle first, definitely for a candle for Cornelia, wishing her a speedy recovery, and all the other members, I do not know them, who have come down with COVID. Let's light a candle of joy for Paula's return. I forgot to mention the candle of joy. Another COVID-related, but this time a candle of joy. Veronica Kobach, sitting right there with her orange mask and orange dress, just recovered from a week of COVID, and today happens to be her birthday, which is great to have you, and congratulations on the speedy recovery. If I may add, I have one here from our service leader, service presenter this morning, Marjorie. Her brother-in-law, Len Bennett, today would have been his birthday on October 1st. We miss you, she writes, and thank you for all the joy that you brought. So we light a candle in remembrance of Ben. Thank you for sharing that. And on a personal note, I might also add, that's just a couple of days ago, I slipped into my 85th year. I had my 84th birthday the other day, and I kind of So that's a candle of joy, I guess, we're going to light. I kind of feel like this year is going to be an eventful year for me, my 85th birthday. I think it's important for us to light a candle of concern of the many, many displaced people around the world, too many to count, who are looking for a better place to be, a better place to live, the life that they've been given. And since we don't have often that much time to give that concern, I did want to share that. And always, as you know, we light a candle of deep, deep sadness and concern and hope for the end of the terrible war that's being waged in Ukraine with the loss of so many lives on both sides. Thank you very much for helping this. And now, as you know, a new feature as of a couple of months ago, we have this wonderful opportunity for any of you here within the Aldea. Unfortunately, on Zoom, they cannot come forward. But please, if you have a joy, a concern, or a sorrow that you would like to light a candle for, then please feel free. We finally light a candle for all the joys and concerns, whether on Zoom or here, that have not been expressed, but lie deeply within our hearts.
Thank you again, Paula. such beautiful music. How does she know exactly how long to play for Joys and Concerns? It's always amazing, isn't it? Just exactly the right amount of time. Okay. So, it's again a pleasure to welcome our member, Marjorie Burren, a professional actress from the stages of New York and Boston, who is also frequently on stage here. It was my pleasure to see her at the Teatro Santa Ana recently in Women on Fire. And there were about 8 monologues. Hers was definitely one of the strongest as far as I was concerned. And many of you might have seen her right here in the Aldea because she has performed here as well. We have fewer and fewer venues in town, so we expect you all to go to every one of them and keep them packed so that we can get more venues open. Theater is life for so many of us. And now you will hear theater, theology, and therapy. Please help me welcome Marjorie Burren.
Thank you, Robin. Thank you, Paula, como siempre. And thank you all for coming today. This is nerve-wracking. I've been a professional presenter for many years, but doing something the first time is always nerve-wracking. So, welcome. In the monologue we heard that my dear compatriot and fellow acting partner Jean read, Shakespeare compares life to the theater, saying that our lives are actually played out in several acts, in which we, of course, are the leading actors, with a supporting cast. And although all the arts, music, dance, painting, sculpture, can move us, inspire us, give us comfort, joy, there is something special about theater, because we are watching live human beings like ourselves, and it gives us a special opportunity to connect with others, with our spirits, and with our emotional selves, to really see the interdependent web of existence that we talk about in our covenant. Years ago, Mel Brooks and Carl Reiner used to do a routine called The 2,000-Year-Old Man. Mel Brooks was a very funny person, played this man from antiquity, and Carl Reiner would ask him questions about what was life like back then. And he once said to him, so how did you worship in the early days? And Mel Brooks said, we used to worship Phil. He said, who was Phil? Phil. He said, Phil was a big guy. He'd come out of his cave and he'd say, worship me, I will take care of you. And we'd all go, oh, hail Phil. He said, well, what happened? He said, well, one day Phil was up there and he got struck by a bolt of lightning and he died. And we all said, there's something bigger than Phil. So our ancestors have always been looking for answers as to who is bigger than Phil. And theater was a way of connecting. Many anthropologists say that the one thing that separates us from our nearest sentient beings is that we are storytelling creatures. Now, I'm not sure, maybe whales hang around the bottom of the ocean and tell stories about the infamous Moby Dick, but human storytelling goes back to the dawn of time, when a shaman, there we go. I know. I always talk with PowerPoint. It's my buddy. A shaman or an elder would be telling tales by the campfire. And this one-man show was done to other people. It included others. And so theater was born. One reason for it could be that it allows us to confront our demons in a safe space and to find means of dealing with them. Fairy tales, dreams, nightmares do the same. But finding a way to explain that which was bigger than Phil has always been a human striving. So in the early theater, Greek theater was a means to both connect with the gods and to appease them if they were angered. This is kind of what a Greek theater looked like. It was in the round in a big amphitheater. One can imagine how and why the ancients created these all-powerful, sometimes whimsical, sometimes malicious gods who could bring about lightning, plagues, floods, all that was inexplicable, all the natural disasters that we can now explain scientifically. And Greek theater was connected with the god Dionysus. A yearly festival in Athens was named after him. Dionysus was considered to be the god of kind of everything that was fun, good times, theater, drinking, and revelry. He looks like a fun guy. So though there was both comedy and tragedy, the purpose of the tragedies was to warn you not to be guilty of what the Greeks called hubris, which was excessive pride or cockiness. And there was a very important chorus, which either intoned the gods or forwarded the action. The people on stage wore masks to represent the character or the emotion they were embodying. And it also projected their voices. I don't think they had these microphones back then, not sure, don't think they did. So the mask would actually help project their voice. And they helped to embody the character. So you weren't supposed to look at the actor, but what they were representing. And these masks later became the comedy tragedy masks that we all know as a symbol of theater. So you weren't expected to just sit there and go, oh, there's Meryl Streep or Marjorie Burren. The purpose was to let you see how hubris or pride could lead to someone's downfall, and then to experience catharsis along with them. Catharsis is a term for the purgation of emotions like pity and fear, and Greek tragedies typically end with a moment of catharsis. It's generally associated with theater, and particularly with tragedy. So when we allow ourselves to cry and mourn in a tragedy, we allow ourselves to confront the inescapable nature of suffering, and in some ways, to make peace with it. And even though Greek tragedies no longer make up the mainstream media, the same ideas can easily be put in practice today. And in fact, one of our rituals in fellowship that Jurgen just so beautifully led is our joys and concerns. As Tom mentioned last week, when we share our joy is doubled. And when we share our pain, the pain is reduced by half, which is very cathartic. So whether you're crying to your favorite song or rewatching the Titanic, or sometimes just allowing yourself to feel sad, it's the first step to moving on from it. So sharing your joy or sorrow. We've all experienced times when we felt sad about something in our lives, and sometimes watching a sad movie or play can make us feel better, even though it seems counteractive to watch something that's more depressing. But in a roundabout way, it helps. Not in that, oh, other people have it worse than me mentality, but rather as a way to find emotional relief. Catharsis doesn't have to always involve crying, but if you are a crying person, then maybe catharsis looks like a good solid cry. And if you're someone who hasn't cried since you were 5, or you're a man who was told men don't cry when you were little, pretty dumb, then maybe catharsis could look like just listening to sad music or wallow in your emotions. I remember at one of our recent services, Paula played the Wings Beneath My Feet at the end of the service. And when I was on the Zoom call, one of the members immediately said, oh, that song always, God bless you, that song always makes me cry. Good. So finding a way to releasing your emotions is crucial to succeeding successfully emotionally and academically. Otherwise, you're letting them bottle up and collect. They form pressure until they obviously explode, messily, unexpectedly, and painfully. Or we sometimes try to bury them with food, alcohol, or drugs, or storming the US Capitol. So there's no shame in being emotional. Contrary to what may have been told you, especially for men, they're far more harmful than beneficial. And remember, the ancient Greeks also invented modern democracy, so they may have been onto something. So from earliest time, theater had this therapeutic aspect. In Oedipus Rex, which is a play by the great Greek playwright Sophocles, Oedipus is warned by the gods that he will kill his father and marry his mother. But he's a very clever fellow, and being so brilliant, he thinks, I'll outsmart them. So he does kill his father unwittingly, and then unknowingly marries his mother. And at the end of the play, realizing what he's done, he tears out his eyes. Now, I'm not encouraging anyone to do that, but the audience is meant to feel what he is feeling and relate to it. And it was a warning to the ancient Greeks, do not disobey the gods. Back to theology. The church evolved into a kind of theater. Priests actually wore these beautiful vestments, which they still often wear. And in olden times, they actually turned their backs to the audience so they could not be just looking at the priest, but at the vestment. So you had a lead actor on stage in costume with a supporting cast, ritual performed in front of an audience. And even in our more modest UU service, we also have an actor up here on stage, music, an audience, and a supporting cast. Dionysus is often compared with Jesus. They both had long flowing hair, usually in a robe. Dionysus is often nude, at least partially nude. We rarely see Jesus nude except when he's crucified. Both were the son of a god and a virgin. Both changed water into wine, and both came back from the dead. So many links have been made. But with the arrival of Christianity, classical Greek values were now reversed. The self-destructive death force that dominated Eros, the life drive. Priests were celibate, nuns buried their bodies in black clothes, punishment of the body by fasting earned praise, martyrs were idolized for sacrificing their lives, and the central image on the wall was a corpse on a cross. So unlike the Greek gods, who were both good and evil, we now have a kind and loving God, and all that is evil is attributed to Satan. But still, the Bible is not without its theatricality. In the Old Testament, we once again have a rather sometimes capricious God who asks Abraham to sacrifice his only son Isaac just on a whim, just joking. Moses coming down with the Ten Commandments must have created quite a stir. Parenthetically, there was a New Yorker cartoon that showed Moses coming down, and there's a kind of disgruntled crowd at the bottom, and the caption was, "No, they really are set in stone." The Sermon on the Mount must have been also quite an event, and here we see Jesus talking to a group, to a congregation, as it were. Lot's wife was punished. God told her not to look back after leaving Gomorrah, which she did, and he turned her into a pillar of salt. Further proof that you disobey the gods or God at your own peril. There's no one dying out there. Those of you on Zoom can't hear this, but there are sirens going off. It's the prelude to a parade, another ritual. It's about to happen. The 1400s introduced Commedia dell'arte, which had stock characters that the audience could connect with. Many of them were mentioned in Jean's monologue, the characters, the businessman, the soldier, and people knew who they were. So there was a greedy businessman or the shrewd maid, the pompous priest. Here again, the audience could identify with characters and in fact, make fun of them, which is very cathartic. If you were a poor person, you could make fun of a rich person in a healthy environment, very cathartic. Then in the 1500s, were introduced to the great plays of Shakespeare, which are performed at the Globe Theater, which is similar in a way to the Greek theater. It's in the round. The poor people were at the bottom. There are no masks, and still, alas, no women on stage. But as in Greek theater, there are omens and portents, and the Elizabethans really believed in these. Julius Caesar, from the play of the same name, is warned by a prophet, his servant, and his wife, Calpurnia, not to go to the forum on the Ides of March. She's had a dream foretelling his demise. He doesn't listen. He feels that omens are meant for the poor people and not for a ruler who's as powerful as he is, and we know how that turned out. In Richard III, he's visited by ghosts the night before the Battle of Bosworth Field, in which he's slain. And Woody Allen, in his film Match Point, has his main character, who's a murderer, visited by the ghosts of the people he killed, which is an homage to classical tragedy. And then in the 1600s, the church banned theater. It's mostly by the Puritans, whose basic tenet was that anybody, anywhere, at any time, should not be having any fun. So they're actually the opposite of Dionysus. And in modern theater, we're often encouraged to sit politely and applaud, turn off your phones, sit there quietly. But many of us have certainly gone to the theater and been moved, delighted, or appalled. So we have, in fact, experienced catharsis. Jesus Christ Superstar is a modern musical which actually features Jesus as a rock star. And like Greek tragedy, it has a chorus. All musicals have choruses that illuminates the action. And in Fiddler on the Roof, introduced many people to life in a Jewish village. Tevye, the main character, is poor, and he actually implores God. God who made the lion and the lamb, you decreed I should be what I am. So he's complimenting God, the all-powerful God. Would it ruin some vast eternal plan if I were a wealthy man? So he asks God, he doesn't go against his will, and then he tells him what he'll do with the riches. So he bargains with God. Actually, Tevye loses the bargain. He remains poor, but it's still a wonderful show. Much of modern theater now exists on television. Many of you, I think, may have seen Breaking Bad, in which the main character, Walter White, who's a science teacher, he finds out that he's dying of cancer. And the whole series is very similar to a Greek tragedy. He has the hubris to think that he's smart enough to manufacture drugs and go up against the cartels so that he can get money for his family. But he suffers a tragic fate. And many of us may have wondered, what would we have done in his shoes? So there are also many ways in which theater directly can and has been used therapeutically. In The Body Keeps the Score, which is a recent book, the author talks about how trauma is actually held in the body, and that by treating the body by a variety of methods, including theater, we can help heal the trauma. Inner city kids often perform Shakespeare. There are many groups around the United States that do this, and they're encouraged to express themselves through dramas. They often do productions of Romeo and Juliet and Julius Caesar that have topics that they can relate to. It gives them a channel to express their aggression safely. And theater can also give them a real sense of community, something that I've experienced as well. Jean and I think, have become friends as part of our theatrical endeavors together. And I don't know that I've ever been part of a production where I've seen someone discriminated against, an actor, because of their race, their religion, or their sexual orientation. It tends to be fairly egalitarian. Then there was psychodrama, which was started by Zerka Moreno and her husband Joel, where couples could actually play each other so they could see the other side of things. And it's often used as a psychotherapy in which people come up on stage and dramatize their traumas, gaining insight into their lives. There's a therapist who serves as a director to keep everyone safe. So they get to act them out in real time and try to deeply understand that particular situation in their lives. It offers a creative way for an individual or group to explore and solve personal problems. Watching the television this weekend, someone described the recent crisis going on in the Congress over the debt ceiling as a Republican psychodrama. Too true. And perhaps some of the players in the January 6th insurrection, if they had a safe place to work out their anger and their fear, it might have prevented a hideous event. For myself, I have been very lucky to have studied with many wonderful teachers, including Tina Packer, who founded Shakespeare and Company in Western Massachusetts. And she was the first person I heard to use the term theater, theology, and therapy because she felt the three ths were connected. In her class, she would choose monologues that went right to people's traumas. She gave me one of Hamlet's monologues. Just a quick review. Hamlet's the Prince of Denmark. He's called back from studying because his father has died, and now his uncle Claudius is the king. His father's ghost appears to him and tells him his uncle Claudius has killed him and is now the king and he must avenge his death. But Hamlet isn't really a killer. He's young, he's a student, he's an intellectual. And what if this ghost isn't even real? Again, he doesn't listen to signs and portents. So in class, she gave me the famous "Oh, what a rogue and peasant slave am I." And there's a part where Hamlet is beating himself up for not being able to act. And he says, "Yet I, a dull and muddy-mettled rascal, peak, and can say nothing, no, not for a king, upon whose property and most dear life a damned defeat was made." And I just started sobbing. My father had died suddenly when he went to work when I was 3 years old, and no one told me what happened to him. They were of the generation that didn't tell children the truth, so they said he was on a business trip. Thank you. It was then, during that monologue, that I realized that little me had thought my father was murdered. I mean, where was he and why was no one looking for him? And when I got to those lines, I realized that I thought someone had taken the dear life of my father. It was very cathartic. Hamlet then decides to do a play in which the killing of his father is acted out because he wants to see if Claudius will flinch and show that he's guilty. I was also very privileged to have participated years ago in a workshop by Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, who wrote on death and dying. Thank you. Wilke Roig continues her work here with death and dying workshops. There were several Vietnam vets there who had never recovered from the trauma of going to that awful war. One of them had watched his buddy bleed to death in front of him, and he said every time his little children spilled something, which little children are wont to do, that trauma would be reenacted for him. Most poignantly, several of them related how they weren't greeted on return with thanks and parades, but instead where they were scorned and reviled, as if they had caused the war, or at least continued it. So Elizabeth said, let's do a ritual and welcome them home. And we all participated. We welcomed them back with a parade, banners, music, similar to what's going on out here. And as you can imagine, many tears were shed. Now, whoops, sorry, Diego, uno más. Okay, thank you, one more. That's the last one. So you might watch the movie Born on the 4th of July, where Tom Cruise played a crippled Vietnam vet. But being part of that welcoming back was a much more cathartic experience. And my last note, I'm going to end with improv. So for many years, I performed and taught improvisational theater in Boston. I'm actually done with the slides now, if you want to go dark on that. One of the basic tenets of improv is called yes and, meaning if another actor comes up on stage and starts a scene, oh, George, we're finally here in Rome. You don't deny it. I'm not George, we're not in Rome, because the scene has nowhere to go. You build on it. Sure, let's go visit the Sistine Chapel. You have to move the action forward. And recently I've read about using improv when dealing with people with dementia or Alzheimer's. Now, sadly, many of us will have a friend or a loved one who gets one of these pathologies. I sometimes feel like I have it myself. Where did I put that? Why am I here? They might not know who you are, or they might greet you as Audrey. And we might want to say to them, I'm not Audrey, I'm Marjorie, and argue with them. But it only upsets them. If they could open that door, they would. I read of a woman living in New York City who, like me, had studied improv, and her mother had come down with Alzheimer's, and the visits were very upsetting, mostly because she tried to talk her mother into her reality. She, in fact, denied her. Her husband offered to do improv with her the next time they visited, and she agreed. So the husband and the mother were looking out the window, and the mother said, "Ooh, look at all those monkeys." There weren't any monkeys in their Upper West Side neighborhood. So he agreed with her and delighted in looking at them. Yeah, there's lots of them. Why don't we invite them in? Well, she kind of demurred. So he said, yeah, they'd probably make a mess. So everything she said, he agreed with her. So it didn't cure her Alzheimer's, but it made the interactions much less stressful for everyone, and it comforted her rather than upset her. And I myself had an English aunt with whom I was very close. She was my favorite. And she had dementia at the end of her life. And she told me I would hate her when I found out what she had done. She said she had brought down the national health of Great Britain. It's a really big meatball, I can tell you that. It's like Medicare or something, or Social Security. So I argued with her, thinking I was assuring her she couldn't do something so awful, but it only distressed her. And I realize now I should have complimented her and said, what a clever girl you are for doing that. So doing improv with people actually connects to our third principle. It shows a real acceptance of others and meets them where they are. So I urge all of you, when dealing with people with Alzheimer's or any kind of dementia, go with their reality. Play in their sandbox. They can't always play in yours. So we can all use theater therapeutically. Thank you.
Wow. You know, it just gets better and better here at UU. It always amazes me. So, you know, theater, theology, and therapy all have lots to make us laugh and cry. But sharing our time, our talent, and our treasure to make our fellowship all that we want it to be is really a pure joy. So, Marjorie mentioned Fiddler on the Roof in her presentation. In the play, Tevye wants to be a rich man, and one way to get prosperity in our lives, according to all sorts of sages and philosophers, is to give. The more you give, the more you receive. As Shona Shilawo said, what you pour out into the world is poured right back into you. The offering will now be collected and most gratefully received. Thank you.
From being a director and producer, part of putting on a good production is the casting. Could there be a better Tevye than Alan? Thank you, thank you. Thank you. We hope that made giving a very pleasant process. It should be. So for our closing hymn, I really want to encourage all of you to participate. Don't just sit there. I have found in life most people don't sing out because they don't think they sing well. Well, nay, nay, nay. Most everybody sings just beautifully. And it's your voice, so enjoy it. Let the music fill you. And Paula picked this wonderful closing song because I think it's something everybody knows. If you've ever been to summer camp as a kid, we always sang it. It's This Little Light of Mine. So stand up as you're willing, sit as you can, but sing out. Let your voices sing. It's the whole point of singing together. much. Thank you, Alan. What a wonderful person to have with me. So Robin is going to come up here. You all may be seated. She's going to unlight our chalice, but the thoughts remain. I know you're all excited by there. If I could just have your attention for one more minute. Since we opened with Shakespeare, I'd like to close with him. This is from The Tempest. Our revels now are ended. We are such stuff as dreams are made on, and our little life is rounded with a sleep. So the next time you go to the theater or watch a TV show or a movie, and it moves you to laugh or cry or to feel for the character, know that you are feeling exactly what the theater was meant to do. Enjoy a good laugh or cry. You're in good company. Have a healthy, happy, and joyous week until we light our chalice again next week. Thank you all. Thank you.